My name is Dr. Kathy Ramstetter, and I am on the board of directors for ASHA. A new member, so I just joined the board this September, or October, I'm sorry, at our conference. So I'm going to do a brief introduction on our association. We've been around since the early 1920s, and our mission is to transform all schools into places where children, every student there thrives and learns. We envision healthy students who learn and achieve in safe and healthy environments, and we are nurtured by caring adults in a coordinated school and community support system. So that some of you may have heard of the WISC program, which is the whole child initiative with schools, and so we are very much an advocate for that approach to coordinated community school partnerships to ensure our children are learning in safe environments. Wanted to also let you know you're learning today by webinar, but we do have an annual school conference, and we are having our next one. It's in October of 2019, the first week there of October, and it's at the Hyatt Regency in Cincinnati, Ohio. And as a native Cincinnatian, I can tell you this will be a wonderful place to have a meeting and learn with others who are like-minded about schools and health and learning. So some of you may already be members of ASHA, some of you may not. Some of you may be interested in becoming members. So the benefits are listed here on your screen. I think probably one of the most meaningful in terms of learning, with and outside of where being in the conference is our Journal of School Health. It is peer reviewed, and we do publish monthly in the Journal of School Health on all issues related to health and learning. And that is typically in the K-12 environment, but we do also have articles and research that is conducted at the college level. We do also have our annual conference, as I said, but we also have a bi-weekly newsletter, and we do have networking communities in the smaller areas of interest for folks who are in school health. And we do offer free continuing education. So those of you who are on the webinar today will earn one continuing education unit upon completion of the evaluation for no cost. Anybody can earn the CE, but there is a cost for non-members. It is a no cost for members. And we do also have discount rates for job postings in the Career Center, and you also have access to that Career Center as a member to search for jobs yourself. And we also have publications discount with the AAP is the American Academy of Pediatrics. So we get a 15% discount on any publications in the American Academy of Pediatrics publications. And I'm going to turn it over now to what you're all really here for, which is to learn from four wonderful presenters: Diane Girouard, Clarissa Hayes, Sommer Purvis, and Carrie Woodruff. You'll see a slight changeover in your screen here as we turn the screen over to our presenters. And with that, we will be, Caitlin's going to hand off to Diane. Diane will be our first presenter today.
All right. Great, thanks, Kathy. All right. And just make sure everyone can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, we're just gonna start this. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. My name is Diane Girouard. I'm a child nutrition policy analyst here at the Food Research and Action Center, also known as FRAC. And just quickly wanted to say thank you so much to the American School Health Association for giving us this opportunity to share with you why high quality school meals is so important for our children across the country. So who is FRAC? We'll start with that. FRAC is a national nonprofit who works to improve public policies and increase access to federal nutrition programs, really to eradicate hunger and undernutrition in the United States. We lead efforts to identify and communicate the connections among poverty, hunger, and obesity among low-income people. And this includes ensuring students have access to high-quality school meals during the school day, but also after school and during the summer. So I will be presenting for FRAC along with my colleague, Clarissa Hayes. on the basics of the different school nutrition programs and the role school meals play in reducing childhood hunger and undernutrition. So I'm going to talk about school breakfast and school lunch, and then Clarissa is going to talk about after school and summer meals. We'll also share some best practices and strategies with you all that you can use to support increasing access to these very important programs and maximize school meal participation before we hear from Sommer Purvis, Administrator of Special Programs, the Livingston Parish Public Schools in Livingston, Louisiana, and Carrie Woodruff, Food Services Director of the Lima City Schools in Ohio. We're going to hear from them after Clarissa and I speak about the basics, about the great work that Sommer and Carrie are doing in their school districts to make sure students are well nourished throughout the school day. We are really excited to have Sommer and Carrie join us to share details about their programs, because I think it really helps to hear from school nutrition directors themselves who are implementing these strategies and best practices in their schools. So first, we're going to talk about the basics of the federal child nutrition programs. So a well-nourished student is more likely to succeed in school, and participation in the child nutrition programs really does ensure students have access to vital, healthy meals throughout the entire day. When schools take advantage of federal meal programs and maximize their participation levels, both students and educators reap these benefits. The child nutrition programs provide nutritious meals and snacks to children while they're outside of their home, at school, at programs operating after school, on weekends during the summer, and in childcare and on school holidays and breaks. These programs can help reduce childhood hunger substantially and ease some of the struggles that families face in trying to keep hunger at bay. So really combined, these programs can provide children 3 meals and a snack each school day. Ensuring that kids receive the healthy meals these programs provide is good for students and their families and educators, but also really just the greater community as a whole. So the National School Lunch Program is the nation's second largest food nutrition assistance program behind SNAP. In most schools, I think it's around 95% actually participate in the National School Lunch Program. Many of the other child nutrition programs, however, really only serve a fraction of the children who need them. So as a result, FRAC has set a long-standing benchmark for low-income students participating in school breakfast, after-school meals, and summer meals, compared to the number of low-income students participating in school lunch to measure how many students could and should be benefiting from the other school nutrition programs each day. While participation continues to grow in all of these programs, school breakfast, after-school, and summer meals have not yet reached FRAC's ambitious but achievable goals, as you'll see here on the slide. So for example, in the 2016-17 school year, which is the most recent year of data available right now, school breakfast was serving just over half of the students who rely on free and reduced price school meals. And our goal is to have 70 low-income children be participating in breakfast for every 100. After school supper reaches just 1 child for every 19 who rely on school lunch. And summer lunch serves just 1 child for every 7 who participates. And so really, compared to FRAC schools, as you see on the slide here, we still have a lot of work to do to ensuring access to school breakfast, after school, and summer meals. So the many benefits of increasing access to child nutrition programs, why is this so important? So research it's very clear that when children are hungry, it negatively impacts their health and learning. They tend to have lower math scores and lower grades overall. They are more likely to be absent or tardy. They're more likely to be suspended from school and have difficulty getting along with others. A hungry child is more likely to have repeated a grade or received special education services or mental health counseling. The school meals programs can significantly address all of these issues. A well-nourished child is more likely to be at school, a better learner, and willing to participate in the classroom. Children who eat school meals more often consume fruits and vegetables as well, and have greater intakes of important nutrients such as fiber, iron, and calcium compared to children who are not participating in the school meals programs. And then also, in addition to providing academic, health, and behavioral benefits to students, the school nutrition programs offer schools an important opportunity to draw down federal funding to support their students and can increase revenue and strengthen your school nutrition department's budget. So the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program make it possible for all school children in the United States to receive a nutritious breakfast and lunch every school day. The school lunch and breakfast programs provide cash reimbursements to schools for each meal served to a child. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but household income by family size determines if a child is eligible to receive free or reduced price meals or must pay most of the cost of the meals. To receive free meals, household income must be at or below 130% of the federal poverty level. For reduced price meals, income must be between 130 and 185% of the poverty level. Some children are automatically eligible for free meals upon certification of their status if they live in households that are receiving TANF or SNAP benefits, or they're migrant, homeless, runaway, or foster children. School lunch serves more than 30 million children on an average school day. 21 million of those students are receiving free or reduced price school lunch. And as discussed previously, the school breakfast program is really underutilized by comparison to school lunch. It's serving 14 million children, 12 million of whom receive free or reduced price school breakfast. That means that's nearly half of the low-income children who participate in school lunch are missing out on school breakfast and its many benefits. Many high-poverty schools are able to even offer free breakfast and lunch for all students with federal reimbursements based on the proportions of low-income children in the school. Providing breakfast and lunch at no charge to all students helps remove the stigma often associated with school meals that it might only be for the poor kids. It also opens the program to children from families that may struggle to pay the reduced price payment or the paid breakfast charges, and also streamlines implementation of breakfast in the classroom and other alternative service models, which I'll talk about in a few slides, and we'll hear from Carrie and Sommer today too on that. Schools can offer free breakfast and or lunch to all students through provisions such as community eligibility, provision 2, or non-pricing. And we'll get into the details of community eligibility in the next few slides, because this is one of the strategies and options that's out there for schools to use to increase access and maximize student participation in school meals. So community eligibility, how does it work? This provision allows schools to offer free breakfast and lunch to all students in the school and eliminates having to collect, process, or verify school meal applications, or keep track of meals by fee category, resulting in significant administrative savings and at the same time increased participation, which is the #1 thing we want for our students. Thousands of schools across the country have successfully implemented this provision and are seeing the many benefits of ensuring that all of their students have access to healthy school meals. Community eligibility was first phased in a few states, beginning in the 2011-2012 school year, and became available nationwide in the 14-15 school year. In the 2016-17 school year, more than 20,000 schools operated community eligibility, and sometimes people will also call it CEP. This makes up over half of all eligible schools. And as a result, more than 9.7 million children in these schools have now had access to 2 healthy meals at school each day at no charge to the student. Schools with a high percentage of free and reduced price eligible children are generally able to make up any lost revenue from paid and reduced price meal fees due to increased participation and resulting economies of scale. The break-even point for each school or district is different depending on your labor and your food costs, your school size, and reimbursement amounts. Schools with 70% free and reduced price eligible students are generally able to break even, but some schools with eligibility rates even as low as 60% can still operate a free breakfast in the classroom program within their nutrition department's budget. So the benefits of community eligibility, there really are so many, but one that's particularly exciting for school nutrition departments is a significant reduction in paperwork. Now, through community eligibility, schools no longer have to collect and verify those school meal applications as we discussed in an earlier slide. So this really ends up cutting down on staff time needed to process that paperwork that instead can be spent on other things like ensuring high quality food is being served and menu planning. Another benefit is that student participation in school meals will increase. According to a study by USDA, participating schools in initial pilot states increased breakfast participation by 9.4% and lunch participation by 5.2%. For some schools, participation also increases because community eligibility facilitates easier implementation of breakfast after the bell model, so those alternative breakfast serving models. When schools don't have to collect fees or count each meal served by fee category, it really simplifies launching a breakfast in the classroom or grab-and-go service model, which are shown to boost breakfast participation. So we'll get into those models again in a few slides. If participation increases, then that means school districts can take advantage of economies of scale and reinvest additional revenue to improve nutrition quality and provide professional development to nutrition staff. Then lastly, community eligibility eliminates unpaid meal fees. I know this is a really hot topic across the nation right now. When all students eat at no charge, the school district does not have to go through that painful process of trying to collect unpaid meal fees from families, which we all know no one enjoys doing that. So who can participate in community eligibility? Any school or district can use this option if at least one of its schools has 40% or more students certified for free meals without an application, usually by way of direct certification. These students that come in without an application are referred to as a school's identified student. Children are certified for free meals without a school meal application because their household participates in SNAP, temporary assistance for needy families, cash assistance or TANF, the Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, or FDIPR, and in some states, Medicaid. These identified students also include children who are certified for free meals without an application because they're enrolled in foster care or Head Start, or they're categorized as homeless or migrant by the district. So every state is required to directly certify students that belong to households that participate in SNAP. But there are many other needs-based programs that students participate in that can be included in your state's direct certification as well. How are these schools reimbursed under community eligibility? Community eligibility schools are reimbursed for meals served based on a formula. Because of evidence that the ratio of all eligible children in these identified categories would be 1.6 to 1, Congress built that into the formula. The reimbursements to the school are calculated by multiplying that percentage of identified students, which we talked about in the previous slide, by 1.6 to determine the percentage of meals that will be reimbursed at the federal free rate. And I apologize, my air conditioning just went on and it is very noisy. So here you'll see in our chart, for example, a school with 50% identified students would be reimbursed at the free rate for 80% of the meals eaten. So 50 multiplied by 1.6 equals your 80%. And then 20% at the paid rate. The remainder of meals served are reimbursed with a lower federal paid rate. And again, many of you may be wondering why the ISP, or that identified student percentage, is multiplied by 1.6. Remember that the identified student percentage, it only includes those students that have been determined eligible for free or reduced price meals through direct certification. This means that this is only a subset of the number of low-income students in your school. So USDA actually did an evaluation and determined that for every 10 children that are verified as eligible for free and reduced price meals through direct cert, an additional 6 children would be determined eligible through a traditional paper application if they had still been collected. But again, that's the point of community eligibility, is no longer having to collect those meal applications. So these students are captured in your reimbursement formula if you use that 1.6 multiplier. So there are really 3 ways to participate in community eligibility. Any district, group of schools in a district, or an individual school with that 40% or more identified students can choose to participate. Districts have some flexibility here, how they want to implement, which you'll see listed on the slide. A district can implement just one school, they can do a group of schools, they can have actual multiple groups of schools within the district, or all district-wide, they can have every single school in the district participate. When schools are grouped together, the ISP, or that identified student percentage, is calculated using the identified student and enrollment totals for all schools in the group. So schools that would not be eligible to participate in CEP or community eligibility individually, may participate as part of a group, provided that the group's identified student percentage is still at least 40%. And again, school districts can also enroll multiple groups in community eligibility. It's not just limited to one grouping per district. And actually, just going back to that, again, I know that's a lot of details about community eligibility, so feel free to reach out to us at any time if you are considering community eligibility in your district and would like to get more information. So increasing school breakfast participation is also another strategy you can do by adopting these alternative service models. School breakfast plays an essential role in a child's ability to learn. However, traditional service models, which occur before the start of the school day in the cafeteria, pose many barriers to participation. This includes busy morning schedules, late bus arrivals, a desire to socialize with friends, and the stigma that school breakfast is only for the poor students, are all reasons why students will not participate in a traditional breakfast. So implementing a breakfast after the bell model that moves breakfast out of the school cafeteria and served before the school day starts, making it more accessible and part of the regular school day, has proven to be the most successful strategy for increasing school breakfast participation. Breakfast after the bell overcomes timing, convenience, and stigma barriers that get in the way of children participating in school breakfast, and are even more impactful when they are combined with offering breakfast at no charge to all students under community eligibility. In order to increase student participation in school breakfast, schools can use one of the following options when offering breakfast after the bell. They can do breakfast in the classroom, grab-and-go breakfast, and second-chance breakfast. So with breakfast in the classroom, meals are delivered to and eaten in the classroom at the start of the school day. Under grab-and-go, children, particularly older students, can quickly grab the components of their breakfast from carts or kiosks in the hallway or in the cafeteria line to eat in their classroom or other common areas. Under second chance breakfast, students are offered a second chance to eat breakfast after homeroom or first period. So many middle and high school students are not hungry first thing in the morning. This is a great option to serve these students after first period, so it gives them ample time to arrive to their first class or their homeroom, and then gives them the opportunity to get a nutritious start to the day. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Clarissa. She's going to talk to you guys about summer and after school meals. And Clarissa, if you were, oh, there you go.
Yep, sorry. Thanks, Diane.
That's okay.
I got myself muted. All right. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all today. Like was mentioned, my name is Clarissa Hayes, and I am also a policy analyst at the Food Research and Action Center, and I focus on the summer and after-school meal programs at frac. So we are going to shift gears a little bit and talk about two programs which can help fill the nutrition gap for children when school ends for both the day and for the year. So I always like to start with setting the scene with a little bit of data. I know that Diane mentioned some data points earlier, but I wanted to just go over these quickly again. So one of the things frac does is track participation and issue reports on current trends and where we are with reaching children with these important programs. So in our most recent reports that look at summer and after school, we found that 3.1 million children received a summer meal on an average day in July 2017, and 1.1 received an after-school supper on an average day in October 2017. So these programs are definitely growing, and there's a lot of work that's being done to expand access. So we know when we compare them to school lunch, which around 21 million children are receiving the school lunch on an average day, we know that there's a lot of work to be done to connect more families and children to these programs, because we also know that food insecurity rates actually increase in the summer because budgets are more stretched and children are home or in programming and they aren't having the same access to school meals. So with that said, I'm going to go over the basics of these programs and then some of the resources and best practices that we found for implementing them. Next slide. Great, thank you. All right, so the first program that I'm going to talk about is the After School Meal Program, which is available through the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And this program is actually relatively new and was only rolled out nationwide in 2010. So the after-school meal program provides federal funding to after-school programs operating in a low-income area to serve meals and snacks to children 18 and under after school, on weekends, and during school holidays. To participate, an after-school program must operate in a low-income area where 50% of the children in a local elementary, middle, or high school qualify for free or reduced price meals. Another component of this program is that after-school programs do need to provide some kind of educational or enrichment activity. So per USDA, there is no strict requirement for what this looks like. It can be as simple as homework help or tutoring, or even more structured, like a Boys and Girls or YMCA program. So the meal can be served at any point during the after-school program, and USDA is able to fund sites a maximum of 1 meal and 1 snack per day. So this program does reimburse public and private nonprofit schools, local government agencies, and private nonprofits to provide these meals. And these entities, called sponsors, have to submit an application and work with the state agency to complete the CACFP application. And once they're approved, they are able to purchase the meals, serve them, and then get reimbursed for those costs. And this program does add up. Sponsors received about $3.31 for every meal served, which can definitely cover the full cost of the meal served. This program is an important resource for after-school programming because it allows them to reallocate funding that they were spending on meals to other costs like program improvements, more staff, and opening it up for more children to participate. The other thing that I would add for after-school meals is that schools can also provide snacks through the National School Lunch Program in low-income areas. This option has been around for a lot longer than CACFP. We really do push schools to serve the full meals, which is not allowed under NSLP. So we really push for the after-school meal program. And if you have any questions about the differences in these two, I would be happy to answer those. And the next program that I'm going to touch on quickly is the Sommer Nutrition Program. So again, these are available through the Summer Food Service Program, and then schools can also provide meals through the Seamless Summer option, which basically means that schools are able to extend their National School Lunch Program into the summer to provide meals. So there's a lot of similarities between the Summer Meal Program and after-school meals. Local governments, school districts, and nonprofits can sponsor summer food sites, which may be located at schools, parks, recreation centers, housing projects, migrant centers, Indian reservations, and more. So they're wherever children are congregating during the summer, if they're at that 50% or more free or reduced price eligibility mark, they can provide meals and reach those children who depend on school meals during the school year. So also similar to the after-school meal program, sponsors are reimbursed for every meal and snack that they serve at sites. And this reimbursement is actually updated every year for inflation, so it usually increases a couple cents for every year, and that's something that frac has available if you are interested in those reimbursement rates. So where the summer and after-school meal programs differ is that summer sites do not have to offer any kind of programming to participate, but it definitely does help children, help draw them into sites. So if there is a community that doesn't have a lot happening during the summer, but there is, for example, a park site or a pool site where a lot of children go during the summer months, that site can open up as a summer meal site and serve meals. The only requirement for both of these is that children do have to stay on site to consume those meals. They can't take those home with them. One other thing that I would add for these two programs before I move on to some of the best practices is that they can provide meals on weekends, holidays, and school breaks. So especially during the school year for those weekends and winter holiday or spring break, schools and other community sites can open up to provide meals. And this can be a great benefit in those communities where they're doing a lot of backpack programs and other things like that. This is a sustainable, reimbursable program that can provide meals when the school day is out. So there are several promising practices that work around the summer and after school meal program, but I wanted to highlight just a few so we can get to the other speakers. The first one that I wanted to mention is just the role that schools can play in expanding access. Something that we always say around these programs is that schools really are the most natural fit for running these programs because they already have experience with the child nutrition programs. They have that captive student audience, as many after school and summer programs and informal enrichment activities are already being offered in school buildings. And a lot of these programs are already providing summer and after school meals out of pocket. So if they switch this program, they're drawing down that additional reimbursement, and schools can actually just incorporate planning for summer and after school meals into what they're already doing. The reimbursement rate for these programs can cover the cost of meals, and there's also a percentage that schools can put aside for any administrative costs that come with operating these programs. Another strategy for increasing out-of-school time meal participation is really just building up that partnership between meal providers, which is usually schools, and program providers. So it's a great opportunity to strengthen those relationships. I know with my experience of working with schools is that it's kind of hard to know what's happening in schools. There's a lot of different programs happening. So it really is a great opportunity to survey what's happening, make sure that all program providers know about this opportunity, and have those communications with food nutrition directors. Another key part about the summer and after school meal programs is increasing awareness. So the lack of awareness is, I would say, one of the biggest barriers to participation in these programs. A lot of families just don't know about the programs. They don't know about who's eligible, where the sites are, and that kind of information. So many states and communities have focused a lot of their expansion efforts for these programs around getting the word out to families, which can mean, before summer, getting information out with students, and then sharing information across advocacy partners. A lot of schools are also doing robocalls during the year to make sure that the information is being shared and canvassing as well. All right, and another thing that I want to touch on, I know Diane touched on this earlier, is these programs can really help reduce misconceptions and stigma around accessing child nutrition programs. It can be a little hard to promote a summer meal site, and families, they don't want to go to a site that's for low-income kids or poor kids or needy kids. So if these can be billed as a community resource that is open to everybody, that can really reduce that stigma and make sure that everyone has access to these important resources when the school day ends. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that probably the best practice for running these is just serving year-round. So when meal providers are able to serve year-round, which means during summer, in the summer months, going to after school, schools are able to keep on staff. They're able to keep drawing down reimbursement even when the school day ends, and they're able to just maintain communication with parents and with families that they wouldn't have if they were just doing school meals and then not offering anything after school or during the summer months. So those are, I would say, the top 5 strategies for increasing out-of-school time participation. And then as far as next steps, I would definitely recommend reaching out to the nutrition directors to see what's already happening with these and if you can get these implemented. And we have a lot of resources on our website, frac.org, which I know is the next slide. We have all of our pages linked here. So there are a ton of resources on the after school and summer pages. And if you have any questions about these, I would be happy to answer those. So I will go ahead and turn it back over to Diane.
Great, thank you, Clarissa. And I know everyone, we threw so much information out there about summer and after school and breakfast after the bell models and community eligibility as some of the best practices and strategies to increasing participation in your school meals programs. But as Clarissa mentioned, our resources are right here. Feel free to reach out to us. But I think it's really important to hear from the school nutrition directors that are actually implementing these strategies. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Sommer Purvis now, Administrator of Special Programs, led Livingston Parish Public Schools in Louisiana, and they have a really fascinating a story to share and why they moved to community eligibility and breakfast in the classroom. So Sommer, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Like she said, my name is Sommer Purvis with Livingston Parish Public Schools. Our district has 43 schools. We have about 26,500 students. We have over 300 child nutrition staff members, and we actually transitioned to CEP in September of 2016. You can switch to the next slide. So once we switched to CEP in September, the following year we actually started our breakfast in the classroom programs. And that year for implementation, we implemented 2 schools. In November, an additional school. And then this August, 4 schools. We had started another in October, and we have another school that's actually going to start in January. So we have a total of 9 schools that are doing breakfast in the classroom. We also have over 20 schools that do a grab and go option before the bell, and we have 2 schools that do second chance breakfast. So we do have a variety of breakfast models throughout the schools in our district. Most of our schools who do the breakfast in the classroom have a grab and go kiosk type of meal service. And so we set up where students are going to arrive on campus and then transition to their classrooms, and we give those meals out at that time. So as students are released from a particular area, they would pass through the kiosk and they would receive a meal and then head to their homeroom class to eat that during homeroom as a group. We do have one school that does direct delivery, and that particular school is in elementary. We typically just work with the principals and the stakeholders at the school level to see which delivery method works better for them on the implementation end of it. And so far for us, the grab and go has worked really well. It's very quick. The students, our meals are packaged as a reimbursable meal. So we know that when students take that bag from the kiosk, that they have a reimbursable meal, and then they have the option to pick up other items as they pass that point. But because they are packaged as reimbursable meals, it makes it very easy for counting and claiming purposes. The other thing is that we also have implemented a lot of share tables because we do packages as a reimbursable meal. Every meal may have a fruit or juice in it. That student doesn't want that, they can always put that on a share table, and then another student may have the option to pick those up. So that's something that's also become very popular in our schools through the implementation of different programs. We do try to maintain our menus very similar to what a traditional breakfast menu would be if you ate in the cafeteria. What we have found is that our students prefer hot meals over cold options. So while we do have some days where there's yogurt and cereal bars or granola bar type options, we find that participation is higher and that students seem to prefer our hot items like sausage biscuits, chicken biscuits, breakfast pizza, French toast sticks, things of that nature. So typically 4 out of 5 days a week, we do have hot menu options for students. Due to the implementation of our breakfast in the classroom, last year we had 2 schools who won the K-8 and the 9-12 categories for the Louisiana Breakfast Challenge. So we did have the highest increase in both of those categories, and we also had schools placed in the 2nd and 3rd place. So we took the top 3 spots in those categories as for the State Breakfast Challenge, which was really, an accomplishment on our end just due to the number of students and the large increase that we were seeing across the district. Next slide. So our transition to CEP was a little bit different. Prior to the Great Flood in August of 2016, our school district did not qualify based on the 40% numbers that you heard them speaking of earlier for CEP eligibility or for community eligibility provision We didn't, most of our schools were below that when it came to direct cert students. However, in August of 2016, we suffered catastrophic flooding throughout our whole entire parish. Our schools were closed for 21 school days. 15 schools were damaged by floodwaters. 3 of those schools were damaged beyond repair and still have not been rebuilt. 90% of the homes and businesses were flooded, and many of our students were displaced or homeless. Because of that, emergency SNAP benefits became very widespread for the students and families throughout our district because of their current situations after this tragedy. So that allowed for us to transition to CEP in August of 2016 with an ISP of 93.34, which, as they said earlier, what that means is for every 100 students, 93 of those students we are paid for the free reimbursement rate, and then the other 7 of those were paid at the paid reimbursement rate. So that was really a benefit to us because at that time there were so many of our students who needed that additional help, and the transition to CEP allowed us to provide those meals for students at school for breakfast and for lunch. And that's really what took on or made our vision for wanting to expand opportunities and transition to alternative serving models and increase the programs that we offered to our students. That's really what made us want to see where else we could go and where else we could take our program. Next slide, please. So what we saw after the implementation of those programs was anywhere between an 80 to a 225% increase in breakfast participation after that implementation. Our increased revenue just from the first 3 schools, from the 2 schools that were implemented in August and from the 1 school that was implemented in October, we saw an additional $500,000 in breakfast revenue. And of those 9 schools that we've implemented, 4 of those are elementary schools, 2 of those are junior highs, and 3 of those are high schools. So the difference that we see on average is that if we do breakfast in the classroom, we're feeding 80 to 90% of our students on campus daily. Breakfast on the go, which in our particular models is just before the bell, so it's not breakfast after the bell, and we see 45 to 60%. And for traditional breakfast, we only see 15 to 35% of our students eat. It's not as convenient. There is a stigma associated with students and school breakfast, late buses, and all of that gives way to the lower participation. One of the other things that we've really seen, and I mean, we can count increased revenue and we can count participation, but there's also a lot of intangible benefits that, we've been able to see. And, the first of those is when you do breakfast in the classroom, students are having peer-to-peer relationships that are mimicking a family that sits around a dinner table. So it's much different than just eating in a cafeteria and coming and going and sitting where you want by your same group of friends. So we found that, we're building a different type of relationships with our students as they eat breakfast. And because during breakfast, the teacher has a different role other than the teacher, it's also creating a different bond between that teacher and those students too, where the students may feel more comfortable to approach that teacher with other issues outside of the classroom. Another benefit that we have seen from breakfast in the classroom is that by moving our staff out of the cafeteria and into the hallways or the commons areas, we've taken away that serving line as a barrier. So our nutrition staff gets to interact daily with those students. We get to ask them, how the game was on Friday. We wear aprons that have their names printed on them so they can learn their cafeteria staff by name and they can interact with those individuals much differently than they have in the past. And all of those are the intangible benefits that we see moving from a traditional breakfast to or from a non-traditional breakfast setting into you know, breakfast in the classroom and breakfast after the bell programs. You know, also we have started with some after-school programs and summer feeding programs. One of the things that we do with our after-school programs, because staffing is difficult, and for anyone who is in food service, you know, it's very hard to keep your cafeteria staffed. But we have found that collaborating with community partners is really been a success for us. So the first program that we started for after school was Feeding Young Minds, which is a collaboration through a local nonprofit who does backpack meals, as well as our local library system. And so the nonprofit provides the volunteers, we provide the meals, and the library provides the location weekly at our library branches for us to provide after-school meals. And so collaborating with community partners, you know, assistant principals, librarians, sponsors who have after-school tutoring and things of that nature, that has really allowed us to expand our after-school programs, because while we may not have the staff, a lot of those individuals are already having, you know, a district employee on campus who can be trained to provide those meals, and that can take some of the burden off of the nutrition staff and help you or allow you to build those programs as you see fit in your district. Does anybody have any questions or?
You know what, let me see if I can pull up any of the questions, or maybe we'll wait till the questions, Sommer, at the end.
Okay.
No, we're going to run out of time. We want to make sure we get to Carrie too. So thank you so much. I mean, sharing that story too with the flooding, and, you know, that is something we're seeing with, you know, major hurricanes, especially on the East Coast, you know, really devastating communities, and how providing school meals it can really be so beneficial to students and their families during times of disasters like that. So Carrie, we are going to turn it over to you to talk about your school meals program at Lima.
Thank you. This is Carrie Woodruff, and I did not provide my demographics, but we have about 3,800 students, and we have 9 schools, and we were at like about 85% free and reduced before we started. I've been here 20 years as the food service director, so starting in 1998. Then in 2000, next slide, we started Provision 2, which is another option that is just free for all breakfast. And that would got us to, they would still come into the cafeteria before school started, and we actually went up to 40% participation just by opening up to teachers, students, or their students and everything. Then in 2003, we started mandatory breakfast in the classroom, but we were also in the midst of a building project. We went from 14 schools to the 9. 2 of them were remodeled, and then 7 of them were new. And so we would use some of the old schools, and then we put them like the 5th, and it was 5 through 8. So the 5th and 6th went to one building, and 7, 8 went to another building. So that's when we really started piloting the breakfast in the classroom during that transaction. And then in 2009, all the new buildings were done, and we started breakfast in the classroom for everybody. But when we went back to the new middle school with the 5-8, she says, I don't know how to do it and not have everybody do it, because we were going to try and do it like in stages. You know, it was K4 and then 5 and then 6, but we just did it all together, and it went very well. I do have really strong administrative support. They actually went to litigation against the teachers because the teachers didn't feel that was part of their responsibility, and so they did go, and that's then one of the things that helped make breakfast available as part of the school day, because before it wasn't part of the, wasn't allowed to be counted as part of the school day, so that helped. So we, in 2014, we actually were serving breakfast in the classroom at the high school. before that, and we had 8 people. That we had 4 different areas, and it just got to be having that much labor that early in the morning. It was preventative, so we went back to serving it in the cafeteria. And like this year, we have about 270 students still participating and about 800 participating in lunch. So we're pretty good with even having it back in the traditional serving in the cafeteria. And what we're really proud of is my whole district is now CEP. And we serve as many breakfasts as we do lunches, all except at the high school. And the next slide is that you need to start with the pilot and then get your supporters. The next slide, okay. The school nurses, your teachers, your social workers, again, administrative support's really important. And get your janitors on board. You know, what we found is the janitors were the biggest complainers, but they saw a difference in the attention span. 40% less nurse visits, so we saw less hungry, healthier students. Like she was saying, you know, you can just tell a difference. And the meal pattern that works for us is kind of like what Sommer said, the 2-component breakfast, so a pancake on a stick, or the whole grain buns or sausage biscuit, and a hot breakfast. We at least try to do it 2 times a week for something with protein. Sometimes we heat things, but it is important for the hot breakfast. Next slide. We also have received awards. When we had the high school, we were District of Silver, so that meant that we were 60 to 69% average daily participation. When we excluded the high school, I had 6 schools that were 80% or higher, and 2 schools that were 70 to 79%. And again, the high school really didn't qualify, but we're still having good participation, and that was just last spring. So next slide is just how we kind of do our grab and go. The students come through at the front door. Next slide, and then they pick up their main components and then get their milk or their extra fruits. Again, we do a share table if they don't want what they have. Next slide. I know we're kind of in a hurry, so I don't want to, again, just a happy student eating, grabbing and going for breakfast. The next talks about CEP, and I think you have all the basis of that. One of the things I don't think they did say, though, is that it is a 4-year timetable, so you get established in the first 4 years, and then the next time is a renewal. And when you do the renewal, it's really difficult because you can't use your applications because you don't have applications. So that is kind of a barrier for some. But we were able to be renewed again for starting a new 4-year cycle. Next slide. So like they said, pretty much free breakfast and lunch for all. It's based on your direct cert. We are at 100%, but we really manipulated making our DCs, making sure that we are including our homeless, the foster students, and then making sure that we checked to see if they had the same students were in the same household or blended. We used our school information system to look to see who was on direct cert and tried to get as many as we could to be on there. Our actual free and reduced status in 2013 was 86.4, so that really did throw us into less than 100%, but when we worked and we tried to get more students on there, we became at that 62.5% direct cert, and we are at 100%. Next slide. And this is just our Sparty eating a healthy school breakfast, and we had the newscast came out and showed him eating our fruits and vegetables and our healthy lunch. Next slide. We also do summer. We've been serving it since the 70s. And, my thing is, if you're going to do this summer program, the Seamless Summer does not give you as much reimbursement, and it gives you have to have more food than on the traditional USDA summer lunch meal pattern. And we actually pay extra for our current staff to do it. And then we have local university, a dietetic intern, Proctor, and they come and do my summer program, and it's a win-win for them because they have that on their resume. And we do text messaging to remind the public that we are having the free lunch and when it is. And we also partner with the community parks, recreations, and anything about like that. The next slide, the students. Next slide. After school, again, it's hard if you don't have the free rate because the free rate is 91 cents, and the paid ones are only 8 cents. But it's really imperative if you have high free that you are doing some type of after school program. The other difficulty is that the component is 3/4 a cup, which is normally a 1/2 a cup. So you just have to remind your staff that that's different for the after snack program. And my final thought would be administrative support is imperative. You have to have conversations with your treasurer because that is definitely a significant change in the budget in a positive way. It does make you in the black. And then the cafeteria staff needs to be engaged and supportive. And then I'll let you read the rest of the slides and we'll go ahead and turn it over to Diane because I know she has conclusions.
Great, thank you so much, Carrie. I'm actually just gonna skip ahead. All right, well, thank you, everyone. I think, it's really important to hear from, again, the school nutrition directors. And thank you, Carrie, for mentioning the 4-year, you lock your ISP in for 4 years under community eligibility. But again, I think it's so telling going back to Sommer's program that looking at her data, that traditional breakfast in the classroom or traditional breakfast served in the cafeteria before the start of the school day was only reaching 15 to 30% of students were participating, and moving it into breakfast in the classroom really shot those numbers way up. And one thing I just wanted to reiterate between Sommer and Carrie too, and a very important strategy either for CEP or maybe during breakfast after the bell models, is starting slow. And that's something we see a lot of districts do, is they'll maybe pilot the programs in a few schools within the district first to see how it goes and get people on board. And then also making sure you have a robust direct certification process to make sure you're capturing all the kids that really should be. Sometimes siblings have different names, or there's a hyphen that kind of messes things up in a last name, but really making sure you're going through and making sure students that should be captured in your direct cert process are. So I think that is it for our presentation. But again, we threw so much information out. We're happy to answer any questions, but if something piqued your interest, community eligibility, or starting an after school or summer program, or moving from traditional breakfast in the cafeteria to breakfast in the classroom, or grab and go, or second chance, please reach out to us. We can definitely connect you also with your state's anti-hunger organization or your state agency if you want to apply for one of these programs. But we are happy to provide you with more information and other strategies, and we have a ton of resources to share with you as well. So thank you again to the American School Health Association for this opportunity.
Thank you, Diane and Clarissa and Carrie and Sommer. Really informative presentation. So this is Kathy Ramstetter again with the American School Health Association. There were 2 questions about CEP and eligibility. So one question was, is there a website for CEP general information? Is that going to be your website, Diane, the frac website?
Yeah, USDA also has a website, but we have a community eligibility homepage with so many different things on there. We have just basic information about who is eligible, how you are, how you get reimbursed, everything that we talked about in these slides. So we have tons of resources. We even have a resource called How It Works, CEP, that we can share with anyone. But yes, we have a ton of information on our FRAC's website. So go to frac.org.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then there's a question here for all that's posted to everybody about the annual membership rate for American School Health and then the CEs. So there are no other questions posted here, but I would let everybody know that's still with us. Thank you for hanging into this last minute here. This will be posted on our website for review following. And also, please feel free to share. It will be available to the public. That's ashaweb.org. So it's ASHAWEB.org. And that will be posted later today or tomorrow. We have another webinar coming up this Wednesday, same time, same place. It's about vaping and our teens in the US. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that as well. And then just a reminder about the eligibility to earn a CE. You do need to complete the evaluation, and you'll receive an email from Caitlin for that link to the webinar evaluation. And she just posted it over there in the chat bar. If you can't see the chat bar, she will be sending that as well. But if you can open your chat window, you'll see a link to the evaluation if you want to take care of it now. So in answer to your question, Jennifer, it's $30 to get the 1 CE. If you are a member, you would get that for free, and that's good for any webinar or other continuing education we do throughout the year. The conference itself isn't free, but any continuing education at our conference next October, you would earn those CEs for participation in the different sessions then, and that would be free for your CEs. The conference does have a cost to attend, of course. And then I see a couple other questions from, Clarissa's writing. I understand now. I apologize for that little drift there. So we do thank you all again for participating today and joining us on this webinar to learn about upping the nutrition at your schools, whether that you are a teacher, a parent, an administrator, or just a concerned community member. So thank you all. We hope to see you again in another webinar. And again, thank you to our presenters for their time today.
Thank you all.